We're going to be solving quadratic equations where the coefficient of the x squared is more than 1. Let's start by reminding ourselves how to factorise this quadratic. So we start by multiplying the x squared coefficient and the number terms, so the 2 and the 15. 2 times 15 is 30. Next, we need two numbers that add together to make the 13, which is the coefficient of the x, and multiply together to make 30. So that would be 10 and 3. 10 times 3 is 30, and 10 plus 3 is 13. Next, we rewrite the question, but instead of plus 13x, we use the 3 and the 10. So plus 3x plus 10x, or you could have it the other way around. Next, we linearly factorise the first two terms and the last two terms. So we look at the 2x squared and 3x, and they both have an x we can divide out. And we look at the 10x plus 15, they both have a 5 we can divide out. Now we look at the terms outside the brackets, and that will form our first bracket. So the x and the plus 5 will form our first bracket, and the repeated bracket will form our second bracket, and that's our answer. Let's have a look at these questions. To solve, we need to first of all factorise the quadratic. So we're going to multiply the coefficient of the x squared by the number term, the 3 by the 5, which gives us 15. We need two numbers that add together to make the coefficient of the x, which is 16, and times together to make the 15, which is nice and easy because it will just be 15 and 1. We're going to rewrite the question, but instead of plus 16x, we're going to write plus 15x plus 1x, or just plus x. We're going to factorise linearly the first two terms and the last two terms. So 3x squared and 15x both have a 3x we can divide out, and x and 5 really only have a 1 we can divide out. So it's going to be 3x on the first bracket and the plus 1 on the second bracket combined to make our first bracket, and the repeated bracket, the x plus 5, will make our second bracket. Next we need to solve, so get each of these brackets equal to 0 and solve them to find our two solutions. So first of all, we're going to have 3x plus 1 equals 0. Going to subtract the 1 both sides to give us 3x equals minus 1. And then we're going to divide the 3 both sides to give us x equals minus 1 over 3, or minus a third. We're going to do the same to the second bracket, get it equal to 0. And this time we're going to subtract 5 both sides. So our two solutions will be x equals minus 1/3 and x equals minus 5. To solve, we need to first of all factorise the quadratic. So we're going to multiply the 6 and the 4 together to give us 24. Two numbers that add together to make 11 and times together to make 24 will be 8 and 3. Rewrite the question, but instead of 11x, we're going to write plus 8x plus 3x. And finally, linearly factorise the first two terms and the last two terms. So that will be the 2x we can divide out of both of the first two terms, and a 1 we can divide out of the last two terms. Get our numbers outside the brackets, the 2x plus 1 to form our first bracket, and the repeated bracket will give us our second bracket. To solve, we need to get each of those brackets equal to 0. So 2x plus 1 equals 0, take away 1 both sides, and then divide by 2 both sides, which will give us x equals minus a half. Do the same with the 3x plus 4 bracket, get it equal to 0, take away 4 both sides, and divide by 3 both sides, which will give us x equals minus 1 1/3. So our two solutions are x equals minus a half and x equals minus 1 1/3. To solve, we need to first of all factorise the quadratic. So we're going to start by multiplying the 20 and the minus 6 to give us minus 120. We need two numbers that add together to make minus 7 and multiply together to make minus 120, which will be 8 and minus 15. Rewrite the question, but instead of minus 7x, we're going to write plus 8x minus 15x. Linearly factorise the first two terms and the last two terms. So the first two terms will have 4x that we can divide out, and the last two terms will have a minus 3. And be careful with the negatives for that. We're going to put together the terms outside the bracket to give us our first bracket of 4x minus 3, and the repeated bracket gives us our second bracket. Lastly, we're going to solve by getting each of the brackets equal to 0. So 4x minus 3 equals 0. Add the 3 both sides, gives us 4x equals 3, and divide by 4 both sides to give us x equals 3 over 4, 3/4. Do the same for the second bracket, 5x plus 2 equals 0, take away 2 both sides to make 5x equals minus 2, and divide by 5 both sides, which will give us x equals minus 2 over 5. So our two solutions are x equals 3 over 4 and x equals minus 2 over 5. Let's finish on this. ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 has solutions x equals minus 6 and x equals minus a half. Find possible values for a, b and c. If you know, write it in the comments below. And you can also come to onmaths.com or click the link in the description where you can access all of our free GCSE papers and predictions, and you can even save your scores with a free account. This video is part of a larger GCSE course that you can follow along with at onmaths.com.